South Park has never shied away from tackling any topic or referencing the biggest names in pop culture, so it makes sense that their games wouldn't either. What's up everyone, I'm Jacob with the Leaderboard, and we're here to check out the Easter eggs in South Park The Fractured But Whole. And before we get started, make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to become part of our notification squad. Bill Belichick. South Park The Fractured But Whole quickly calls out any cheaters within the game. There are a handful of instances where you're required to input codes that are found through NPCs or notes in the game. Of course, in the age of the internet, it's so easy to just look up a code and input directly without having to spend time finding it. This is very doable in The Fractured But Whole as well, except that Cartman will call out anyone who does it. Well, it's Cartman dressed as New England Patriots head coach Bill Belichick. He pops up out of nowhere and he basically yells at you as if you were Tom Brady and asks if you'd rather be a cheater or actually play the game. Aside from it being a direct reference to Belichick, there's also a double jab thrown here at the Patriots themselves. In 2007, the Patriots were the center of a controversy in which they were caught videotaping the New York Jets defensive coaches during a game, a fiasco that was eventually known as Spygate. Later, in 2015, the Patriots found themselves in the midst of another controversy with the now infamous Deflategate. They won a playoff game by a decisive 45-7 victory, and it was later found out that the footballs used for the Patriots on offense were slightly deflated, which made throwing the ball easier. All of that has now led to Cartman dressed as Bill Belichick yelling at you in a video game for cheating. The Thrift Shop. At the Sloppy Seconds Thrift Shop in Fractured, there is a bounty of Easter eggs hidden within the store. Ash Ketchum must frequent the store since his jacket is hanging off one of the dressing room doors and his hat is displayed on one of the clothing racks. Fred Flintstone's orange romper jumpsuit tarp thing can also be found on one of the clothing racks. April O'Neil of the Ninja Turtles left her yellow jumpsuit at the shop. Looks like Charlie Brown even got tired of his famous yellow shirt and donated it to the thrift shop as well. Not only that, but Dipper from Gravity Falls has also left his hat at the shop. Velma and Daphne from the Scooby-Doo gang apparently got rid of their iconic outfits as well. Okay, so a lot of cartoon characters in general frequent this thrift shop apparently. Who knew that South Park was such a famous cartoon destination? One of the sadder pieces of clothing at the thrift shop is that of Prince's purple suit piece, frills and all. This section could honestly go on and on since there are so many pieces of clothing to spot out from pop culture and cartoons. Morgan Freeman. This one is a little more of an obvious reference, but it is possible to find Morgan Freeman within Fractured. Now, what might Mr. Freeman be doing in South Park, you may ask? Why, what any famous actor would be doing. Selling tacos. It's possible to visit Freeman's Tacos at some point in the game where he'll tell you what the special is, which is always tacos. At first, it may not seem like much aside from just having Morgan Freeman in the game, but it is actually possible to fight him. If you strike him once or twice, he won't really do much besides saying it's not a good idea to do that, but with enough hits, a battle will start. Freeman is easily one of the hardest bosses in the Fractured But Whole, similar to how Al Gore was in The Stick of Truth. It's highly advised to fight Freeman after beating the game. Once Mr. Freeman is taken down, the achievement Farts Over Freckles is awarded to the player, as is the Golden Taco relic. The Golden Taco can be used to give all powers a 10% boost when the Freckles makeup is equipped. Skipping the intro. As with most games, it's possible to skip cutscenes in Fractured. No matter how pivotal or important they may be, you do have full reign to skip all of them. Well, almost all of them. At the beginning of the game, there's an opening cinematic which has Cartman, aka the Coon, explaining the story and how the town has gone bad. If you hold down the skip button, Cartman will break character and start telling you that you don't want to skip this. Despite his annoyance, if the skip button is still held, he will eventually concede and let you skip the opening cutscene. The only thing is that he actually makes you skip the entire game and will take you directly to the end credits. It's safe to say that you shouldn't try to make Cartman mad, whether he's Cartman, the Coon, or Bill Belichick. Cartman's Rubiks Cube. Cartman's basement has a lot of items to interact with, including his official Coon merch store, the top bad guys board, the biometric artifact enhancer, and more. One of the most important artifacts in Cartman's basement, though, is a Rubiks Cube that is protected with glass. Cartman doesn't really care that much if you mess with the stuff in his basement for the most part, but he insists that you do not touch the Rubiks Cube. And remember when we said you shouldn't make Cartman mad? Well, it's important to heed his word this time around, because if you continue to knock it around, Cartman will warn you that the whole world will die. Sure enough, with a few good hits, Cartman will yell, "No!" and the game will cut immediately to a game over screen. The Stick of Truth. Of course, the Fractured But Whole had to reference its predecessor. A lot of fans loved what Stick of Truth did for the franchise in the video game world. It made South Park a legitimate name in the market, so it only makes sense that Fractured would throw in some nods to the Stick of Truth. One of the collectibles in Stick of Truth were Chin Pokemon. In Fractured, the newest collectibles are that of Yaoi drawings. So you might be asking, well, what happened to all the Chin Pokemon that you worked your butt off to collect? Well, they actually aren't gone entirely. In the new kid's garage, they can be seen seen in a box collecting dust. Not only that, but there's another box filled with a bunch of medieval weaponry, which was used in the Stick of Truth. The biggest trophy in the garage, however, is the mantle of Al Gore's man-bear pig helmet. While the new kids' heroics and conquests from the Stick of Truth were short-lived, they shall never be forgotten entirely. In fact, the Fractured Butthole starts where the Stick of Truth left off until all of the kids got tired of playing fantasy and decided to play heroes instead. This explains why the new kid has to start from scratch with all their new powers. Pokemon Go. The Chin Pokemon references don't stop with the abandoned toys. Call Girl's ultimate ability is connecting two of her phones together to use the Chin Pokemon Go app. This is of course a nod to the famous Pokemon Go game. The ultimate ability shows people from all over the world getting a notification, no doubt alerting them of a Chin Pokemon in the area. Soon enough, a swarm of people gather onto the battlefield that do a good amount of damage against opponents. This attack mocks the craze that was Pokemon Go, especially when people were trampling over one another just to collect those sweet digital Pokemon. Jared Fogel. It wouldn't be a South Park game without rubbing a few people the wrong way. So what better way to do that than with the former Subway King himself, Jared Fogel. Jared is a boss fight 1/3 of the way through the game, and he's about as creepy and weird as you'd expect the South Park version of him to be. His appearance seems to be a direct reference to how he looked in the Jared Has AIDS episode of South Park. He even summons AIDS to help him within the fight, and the remixed Subway theme song that appeared in that episode is also used in this instance. Jared's attacks throughout the battle are, well, they're pretty vulgar and creepy, which fits the South Park bill. If Subway sandwiches weren't ruined for you before, they definitely will be after fighting him. After the battle, the game gives you the option to either spare Jared or fart in his face. Nothing really happens either way, but if you let the timer run out during the decision, the game will prompt a message just saying, seriously? Canada. Canada was one of the biggest highlights of the Stick of Truth. It featured an 8-bit overworld map that paid homage to older games like Mario and Zelda. It was easily the biggest surprise in Stick of Truth in terms of presentation and how it shifted the look of the game entirely. Canada does make an appearance in the Fractured Butthole, but alas, it isn't as satisfying this time around. If you make the trip up to the Canadian border, you'll be immediately stopped by an organic food vendor. The food vendor just so happens to be the old farmer who warns Butters about the dangerous roads in the South Park episode Butters' Very Own Episode. The farmer is actually based off Judd Crandall from the film Pet Sematary. Just as Crandall does in Pet Sematary, the old farmer warns everyone of the dangers in the world. When you approach the farmer, he'll move in any direction that blocks you from visiting Canada. He'll then tell you of all of the horrors that have happened in Canada since the Stick of Truth. It is possible to get past the old farmer by blocking him with a basket of berries. And once you get past him, you can walk up to the Canadian border, only to be greeted by a giant wall. There's one Canadian citizen sitting atop the wall who greets you and then tells you that you can't come in. Eventually, a second citizen will shout from behind the wall saying how cool it is in Canada. The citizen on top of the wall will then tell you to buzz off, and they might do a DLC sometime down the road. Ubisoft has outlined the DLC that's included in the Season Pass, and sadly, there's no reference of Canada in there. All of the DLC titles have specific locations, aside from Bring On the Crunch, which does promise more story content, so it's possible this might bring back Canada. Satan. Okay, so the actual character of Satan isn't in the Fractured Butthole, but there is a reference to someone who was very close to Satan at one point. In the break room at the police station, there's a box containing some cold cases. One of the photos sticking out is of a man who, upon closer inspection, is Chris, Satan's former lover. Chris fought for Satan's love against Saddam Hussein in the episode Do the Handicapped Go to Hell? He hasn't been seen since then, and this cold case only further speculates where he might be, although since he is dead, he's probably just hanging out in hell and hopefully has found a new man. Mr. and Mrs. Hankey. One of the biggest features in the Fractured Butthole is taking selfies with various citizens of South Park to gain a following on Coonstagram, and who better to take a selfie with than everyone's favorite piece of poop, Mr. Hankey. Once you have the Sandblaster ability unlocked, go to the community center and go in the female restroom, and there use the Sandblaster ability to shoot out a giant, poop to free Mr. Hankey. He'll thank you for rescuing him and will happily take a selfie with you. Once the selfie is taken, he leaves you to tend to his children. It's also possible to meet everyone's slightly less favorite piece of poop, Mrs. Hankey. At Stan's house, use the Sandblaster ability yet again outside the bathroom and the room will be engulfed in poop. Mrs. Hankey will appear by the toilet and be in shock since she was hanging out in a U-bend. She'll also take a selfie with you to gain your popularity with the all-important poop demographic. Once again, I'm Jacob, and thanks for watching Easter Eggs in South Park The Fractured Butthole. Which one is your favorite? Did we miss any? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of our notification squad, and if you like getting more from your games, subscribe to the Leaderboard, your home for video game facts.